And Chairman Wallinen.
Yes. I'll entertain another motion.
I'd like to make a motion that we direct the superintendent for our September meeting to consult with our attorney to help us in the steps to go forward for closing an elementary school for the following year, to start the process. We can always change the process as we
Okay,
go through.
just your motion first.
Okay, motion for, talk afterwards. To direct the superintendent to work with our attorney, to consult with our attorney, outlining the steps necessary in a sequential process, procedural steps for closing an elementary school for September 2019.
Do I have a second?
2020.
Thank you. Okay, do you wish to discuss that more now? Mark?
No, I'll leave it up to this.
Comments? Discussion? Peggy?
I mean, if we're going to look at that, because we've been on the task force for also 5 years, and they felt that no one wanted to close a school. So if we're going to look at closing one, we look at closing more than one. I think that's the avenue we go. We've talked about, and Maureen had brought it up in the past, that we could close 3 and put all the kids in 2. So I mean, I think rather than fingering out one school, we look at the whole picture.
Well, the motion is to ask our attorneys to lay out the steps.
Yeah, he said
so
for
that,
school though.
For an elementary school.
And elementary, okay. So, I mean, when we discuss this in September, we can,
Okay.
we can amend that. But what we're looking at right now is so that we have the attorney's input in front, so that if we do something, we don't get something later saying, oh, gee, you should have done it this way. I think that's what we're looking at.
Steps on the timelines.
Right. Anybody else?
Mr. Marsh? Mr. Brophy?
Yes.
Mr. Deschamps?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mrs. Chamberlain?
Yes.
Mr. Correa?
Yes.
Mr. Wigler?
Yes.
Mrs. Thompson?
No.
Mr. Nutter?
Yes.
Mr. Jean-Francois?
Yes.
And Chairman Wallinen.
Yes. You had a request for executive session?
I had a request for executive session for a potential discussion for cafeteria. We have no need for it to go into executive session. I can bring the information in September. In our packet, we have a draft.
No, you can't bring it in September. We
Okay.
want the position August 27th.
Okay.
No, we want the vote now.
Can I do it
In
publicly?
public section, sure.
Okay, do a public session? Okay. So no, we don't need to go into further into executive session. We can do it publicly in our packet. I can ask Cheryl to quickly outline, if you like, why we are proposing a position in the cafeteria position for a team leader at one of our buildings in the high school.
We have an opportunity because there is an opening at the high school to reevaluate the staffing pattern that we have there. Earlier in the year, we had a cook supervisor at Ruggles Lane that left the district, and we have appointed a worker from the middle high school to be that cook supervisor at Ruggles Lane. So we took a look at what we have, and our high school is the only school's staffing pattern that is too small for the number of meals they serve. And so the director and I, I'm sorry, she couldn't be here tonight. She had a death in her family. She's on her way to New Hampshire as we speak. We looked at the position, and rather than add or fill the open position as a general worker, we'd like to institute a nutrition team leader. This person would assist the cook supervisor at that location in assisting and supervising the workers that are on the line. We came up with a salary, and that's what we had to negotiate with the food service workers. We came up with a salary that is slightly higher than the top step of the general workers that work at the location, but less than a supervisor who works at a cook supervisor that works at the elementary schools. So we came up with a salary of $18,500.
Okay. So
There's a difference between, Cheryl outlined, there's a difference between the cafeteria worker and a supervisor. In between that, the person is more of a team leader, non-supervisor responsibilities. And it's a pilot only for 1 year to evaluate it, because we'll be going into negotiations with the cafeteria for monies in the end of this year. So it made sense. We met with the, instead of putting an executive session, we met with cafeteria leadership yesterday, and they had no problem with it. They supported the job description and the salary, and wanted the same perspective to look at it in a year, make the adjustments, and go forward on that.
Okay,
Move
so,
administration's recommendation to hire this person.
Well, it's the post, we need to.
Post.
position.
Post it.
to post the position.
Second.
Correct, okay. So, this can be a roll call vote, or, I mean,
I think it can be
Did you
a
second
majority,
it?
we'll double check.
just a
with
majority vote?
Yes, who seconded the motion?
Dave.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions on this? Okay, all in favor to move forward to post this position, please raise your hands. Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. I'll
Thank you.
entertain another motion.
Is there any?
No,
You have a motion to adjourn? Second.
thank you. We're adjourned.
It says 12 days, we have a problem. I don't know what it says.
Call the meeting to order, please. Can I have a motion on the approval of the minutes of the June 26th, 2018 meeting?
Move to accept. Second.
Okay, any comments or corrections on those minutes? Seeing none, all in favor, please raise your hands. Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. All right, so before I turn this over to the superintendent, so where we're sitting at is, at the last meeting, we voted to move all the children in one school of the Braintree OCAM situation into OCAM, contingent upon the vote of the parents of those children in OCAM and New Braintree, and school choice who attend also. So the superintendent will talk about those votes, but in the interim, we've had a letter sent to us, once again, she'll go through this, but we've had a letter sent to us from the New Braintree Select Board, whom I guess during discussions a month ago, we thought were on board with this, but apparently are not. And so based on that, we called this meeting. We also received some input from our attorneys regarding following the 5-town contract. And so we figured we better call this meeting and discuss what we did the last meeting and how we would like to move forward. And that's kind of the chronology, so I will turn it over to Sheila.
So I have several pieces of information to provide to the committee tonight. I'll start with the survey results. In your packet, you have a summary of the survey results from the parents of New Braintree parents, OCAM parents, and school choice parents. At the top, you will see, again, a summary of the overall results. So in New Braintree, there were 47 surveys mailed, 27 have been received back. 19 parents were in favor of the move of all students to OCAM Center School, and 8 parents were opposed. In OCAM, the results were much more positive, with 51 parents responding positively and 2 responding negatively, and with school choice, 4 parents responded positively and 1 responded negatively. Below that, you'll see the breakdown by grade level of the positive votes and the negative votes as points of information, and then any comments that were written and attached to the survey are transcribed at the bottom of the sheet. So overall, the parents were overwhelmingly supportive of the move. I don't know if you want to discuss each of these items, each of these points of information, or want me to give the general summary?
Why not the
Why
general
don't I do-
summary? I mean,
why don't I go
obviously,
through
the vote is positive, so that
Right.
was part of what we, the school committee, voted upon. The conditions subsequent, which were met, so I don't know if there needs to be much discussion on that.
Exactly.
So why don't you move forward from
Okay.
there?
In addition to that, as Chairman Mullane mentioned, I contacted our attorney as we discussed at the last meeting, as part of one of the steps that we would take. The attorney who worked with the school district on rewriting the regional agreement was Attorney Lennox. He is no longer practicing, and however, an attorney who works in the same law firm who did assist with some of the work on the regional agreement was available, and I spoke with him at length about the current situation. And sent him a copy of the regional agreement. He has reviewed it, and he is concerned about the language relative to in section 9. So you all have a copy of the regional agreement in your packet. On page 9, I believe, section 9. Is where the provisions for allowing students in the district to attend our schools, and where it describes the intent to have elementary students attend schools in their own town. Below that are 5 exceptions to that provision. We've been discussing exception number 4 in paragraph 4, which talks about reassigning one or more grade levels of students, but not all grade levels of students, due to certain conditions, declining enrollment, fiscal conditions, or educational purposes. And we've been discussing doing that primarily for educational purposes, as well as actually for all 3 reasons. The language that is concerning is the language in line 3 that specifically states reassignment of one or more grade levels, but not all grade levels. With the vote that was taken, we would essentially be moving all grade levels out of New Braintree Grade School and into Oakham Center School. We were discussing having district students, high school students from our transition program, attend school in the New Braintree Grade School while we continue to work with the Center for Hope in trying to come to some agreement of perhaps leasing some space in the New Braintree Grade School. However, in the opinion of our attorney, that is not in alignment with the language that's in this agreement around grade levels of students. His interpretation is that this language refers to elementary grade level students, and therefore all of the exceptions below this language are referencing grade level students. So he believes that if we were to move all of the grade levels of students out of New Braintree Grade School, that we would need to follow the procedures outlined in paragraph 5 of this section, which describes the procedures for closing an elementary school in our district. In addition to that, we have received a letter from the attorney that represents the town council for New Braintree, and essentially stating that her opinion on the actions that we've proposed, as well as the interpretation of the regional agreement, is congruent with the opinion that our attorney has. In that letter, she stated that there was an intent on the part of the New Braintree selectmen to take legal action if, in fact, we were to decide to move all of the students in New Braintree to Oakham. So I can provide further clarification on any of that if there are questions.
Questions? Comments?
Yeah, I have some questions. Yeah, thank you for the clarity of that with the perspective of the language in question. The discussion that came this all about was dealing about what was the best way we could work with the district as well as the assignment of grades in the most effective educational manner, correct?
Absolutely.
So last fall, we had the safety issue in Ocam, which then we moved the students to New Braintree. While we did that during like November through June,
Mm-hmm.
October through June.
Yes.
Okay. So then in June, we talked about what we could do, maybe with not only with New Braintree, the K-1 model back to what we've been doing for the past, what, 8 or 9 years? K-1 with Ocam and New Braintree. How many students do we have right now listed for K-1
I believe it's
between the two?
63 students, 63 total students would be enrolled in grades K and 1 based on our current enrollment
Of the joint K-1?
of both Ocam and New Braintree.
Even though I know we had a long discussion last in June, thank you for the survey. The survey is very overwhelmingly supportive, we know that. That helps us in our deliberations, as we said when we bring that in. But the language in our agreement, I think we have a problem with our potential vote that we did in June. We also thought it was a safety perspective. The number that I thought was used around was 35 or 40 students was the number, the preliminary number for K-1, but it's a 63 if we open up August 30th or first week in September.
I believe so. Tricia can probably confirm that. That's based on our student enrollment that we have in our student information system.
43 students from Ocam and 15 students from New Braintree. There are some school choice coming in, but I did count them as far as residents.
It's 58, so there must be either 5 school choice.
What is the number for school choice, Trish?
Off the top of my head, I think there's 2, Jess, maybe?
I think there were 2.
One for sure and one
Her
for
numbers
grade.
are off,
But I
right?
did speak with Mary today, and we went over all the numbers. I think there's a couple that might be moving out that are still in our rolls because we don't know that for sure.
Okay, so your numbers are slightly lower than ours, but that's because of students who are unenrolling? Okay.
But we don't have the paperwork for that yet.
And none of the transition program students are elementary students?
No.
And they're not New Braintree? They don't reside in New Braintree?
That I don't know. One resides in New
One
Braintree.
resides in New
Okay.
Braintree. But it's not a grade.
Well, they're not elementary level students, so again, the legal opinion is that this language specifically speaks to elementary level students. If you look at that opening paragraph under section 9, the second sentence, it references all pupils will receive their elementary school education and facilities that are located in the member towns, except for the following. So
Right.
all of those statements that follow are exceptions to elementary level students.
And on number 4, thank you, Lee. When we looked at number 4, and we thought maybe potentially on the safety piece, and we ended up going with this perspective with the survey, we didn't follow the other piece of number 4
Exactly.
of all grades. However, no grade level or grade levels of students residing in a member town shall be required to attend a school except by attend school or schools in another member town or towns, except by a 2/3 vote of all members of the school committee, no problem with that, which will occur only after at least one joint public meeting of all boards of selectmen of the member towns along with representative of the district, as well as at least one joint public hearing to be held by the committee on the issue of the proposed grade level reassignment. Did we do that?
No, we did not take those steps, so that's another concern. Again, noted both in the letter from the Town Council of New Braintree as well as by our attorney, there are 3 specific steps. The 2/3 vote of the committee would have to occur after those joint meetings, which we have not yet held.
But the question is, at least according to what the attorney has told Sheila, is even if we did that, there's a question as to, well, maybe it's an ambiguity. Even if we did that, there's a question of, could we have the situation with no elementary students in New Braintree? I mean, I'm, you know, in reading this, and I've reread it 20 times today, in rereading it, it's the clarity is not as good as it should be, maybe. That's what we're looking at. I think that, I'm not sure why that paragraph would be there about the.
So where do they get that, I guess, and what resource is that we're allowed to?
Yeah, there's a repository of public domain films
Okay.
that he can draw from, and I mean, there are 3 channels. There's just not that much programming to film, so he just throws stuff on there. Yeah, so there are a bunch of old public domain films, things that where they back when it used to be that you actually had to have the words copyright on a film or it wouldn't be copyrighted, and sometimes they messed up, and so things went into the public domain that had been commercial films, things like that. That's kind of mostly what that stuff is.
Oh, all right, okay. All right, so I guess that also, seeing what we might be able to expand on that, and if there's actually expenses we could incur to expand that database of, you know, maybe we get the right to purchase certain things that we can sell here, you know, show on the channel here and there. Again, if the PEG access budget allows it, and we say, okay, we can pick 5 movies a year that are newer, more contemporary, but we just need to buy the showing license for whatever a week, choose certain holiday. I'm just bringing things out that kind of look outside our box and what's capable if we actually aren't just doing it flat out for free, but we're willing to spend a little money. What can we get? And I'm wondering if he can offer some options based on what he knows are resources as well. If you can, I don't know, speak to anybody else that is familiar with that industry.
Yeah, Rick would be the person to talk to. He's run a much larger cable system than ours,
Okay.
so he knows. My only caution on spending the PEG money is that we're probably never, once this contract ends at the end of its 10-year span, I don't think there's going to be another one. I think that the whole concept of cable TV and public access and all of that is ending. So to the extent you can keep money in that fund to keep going beyond the 10 years and, you know, out into the future and keep paying for maintenance of systems like this one, that's a good thing.
I get you. So don't deplete the budget.
You might not want to. But there's
Makes
a lot
sense.
of money coming in. We've got a pretty good deal with Charlie, negotiating it. So.
Okay. Well, thank you. Do you guys have anything?
The intent is just to video basketball games?
Anything that goes on in the gym. So it could be award ceremonies, it could be any sporting event that happens in the gym. This, I guess the system uses an algorithm that follows the action of what's going on. So you're basically already creating that link to the camera. So it could be just a still shot on a person in the background, or it could be the movement of
Are any of the outside sports currently on public access?
I don't believe so.
Because
He hasn't been. He's tried to.
90% of the sports are outdoor sports.
Yeah, he's tried. The problem is finding someone who's willing to volunteer to tape it.
To do the
Does it
video?
cost us to get it onto the
Not at all.
It's
If
just
you
a matter of.
It's getting a volunteer to run the camera.
So this
To
is
get
the
someone to do it.
$2,000 just to get the stuff from inside. Okay. But they do a lot of stuff in the auditoriums. And some of that could be streamed live, graduation ceremonies and things like that would be nice.
Be interesting to talk to them about whether they have an outdoor solution.
Yeah,
More expensive, but
even a secondhand outdoor camera that maybe, used to be used in professional series and someone's upgraded a new model and they're outdated for that, but it may suit just fine, and I'm sure there'd be no shortage of volunteers that love to run a camera during a game.
No, there is, there's a short, and the town has cameras. If
If you had a real nice hooded camera, the real deal, you might
I'm
get people
telling
that,
you,
really?
you can't get anyone to do it. So, I mean, keep trying, ask people to do it.
We do pay people to video committee meetings that aren't in this room. We could also look at that, and I'm sure that that would fit, a small budget would fit under the PEG expense, cause it's for producing.
Especially if
So
you
that's
look at
something else we
policy.
might consider, is
If you
if
look at
somebody's
policy.
interested to be paid to do Friday night football games or springtime soccer. I'm not trying to limit, but we would have to look at it, see how much, probably assume it's about a 4-hour average, prep, setup, watch video, put it together, send it off to Rich. And so we'd have to figure out how many nights a year we think we could budget that based on, in a way, what we're paying Tyler. You know, it would kind of be the same concept. And if you do 4 hours a day, 4 hours a week, 52 weeks a year, how much does that cost? And then we don't have to do it every week, but it's 52 events we can cover outside of it.
There's about 36 school weeks, and whatever those school weeks, you might only have home games.
But
know.
you might do twice a week, a soccer game and then a
Right.
football game, or
Right. And,
softball and baseball, or I
field
don't know
hockey's
which
big.
ones we
Field
have.
hockey's real big around here.
Okay.
Of course, football gets a lot of attention. Soccer and both boys and girls. Track events are nice to see. There's a lot of people involved, but it's tough to cover because there's so much going on. And for probably not a huge addition to that money, we could get some outside attention, and there's a lot more going on outside. I'm not belittling the inside thing. It's a good idea, but I think we ought to try to take a step further. That'll give us more public access to watch. Those games could be, I know they sell tickets to the football and to the basketball, but they don't tell the soccer and field hockey and other things, and those games could be broadcast live. Get people more involved any way we can.
To do live, though, would have to do more of an
If we
capital
could.
investment
Doing
to put.
outdoor live would be hard, but doing, getting the outdoor games on, within a few days.
We'd have to, have fiber down to the school so they would feed from the field.
Well,
with
it'd
the
be
fiber.
that, but also different cameras. The cameras we have aren't really designed to transmit the information that fast and that proper and that with
They
any
coordinate.
detail.
They would coordinate.
Yeah, you,
with the days.
you still want to put some sort of delay because the schools want some draw to get people to actually go to the games and spend the money.
Yeah.
That goes back into the school rather than just being able to sit at home and watch it.
Yeah. Okay. But it might also be worth looking to see what the price would be to have some type of, I'm not saying we could do it, but is there a way to get some mobile camera system that certain events we might want to do live, even if it's like
Graduation.
town meeting. Sometimes people can't make it, but they would love to know if something came up. It's like, you know what, I'm getting in my car. I'm just suggesting that it's possible that being able to do some of those things live also could be beneficial. I would just like to know the numbers, not to say that we'd ever be in a position to make that step, but it'd be nice to know what it would cost, and if it's not nearly what we think, then maybe it's actually worth considering. Other than that, I appreciate your input.
So as far as the current solution, you want to pursue that, or do you want to get more information as far as outdoor stuff first?
What I would,
Separate issue, I think.
I think we could pursue the huddle thing, but I would also like to get more information from Richard on how the scheduled programming is chosen.
And how to best pursue the outdoor.
Yeah. But right now, I think huddle might be the quickest way to get new programming in that we can start choosing and actually expand the viewership to,
But they may already have solutions and ideas for the outdoor things. It doesn't hurt to ask, that's all I'm saying. It's
and I
a
agree.
good time to address it since we're already on the topic.
Yeah.
And,
And Richard Shirley would be able to tell you what's the best equipment to put in the field that's easiest for him to bring right into his equipment and save us all translation and
whether someone
time.
sets up on the stands, or they set up on the announcing tower, either way, they can get a good vantage point of the field. And
I think he's gotta convert those files too, right? They don't, how it's saved on a camera,
There's a process.
it's gotta be turned into another file before it can actually be, yeah, it's something like a dot move versus a dot something else versus who knows. Okay. And if we can save that, we're actually saving time we spend with Richard doing the conversion versus just run it through the system. Claire?
I've been having thoughts when watching that. Is there a way to get when the meetings are on? It seems like when I
a
turn
programming
it
schedule
on-
that people can go and check and see what's coming?
It's the same one I've watched before, you know, if you know the time that it's on. Is there some way we can have a program or something?
Well, there is a program schedule, but of course, it only runs in between programs, so
Yeah.
you wouldn't see it,
Yeah.
right? So,
You know, so could it be put like on the, with the
Does he do it
selectmen?
by the day,
you know,
by the
all
week, or by the
announcements
month when
for
he
the
creates a
town?
schedule? That would be worth knowing, cause then he can just send it to us and we can either post it on the town website or on the Facebook page, and it would be a quicker reference to get to each time you want.
Don't you have it on the, I haven't even looked, a running thing of things going on in town, on the cable channel?
I think there's some things like that, kinda like what he's saying, it's not just events that are gonna be played on that channel, but there are sometimes you get that events in town coming and they give you a calendar,
Most
but
towns have one.
yeah, there is, but
Well, you
they.
put 'em
because
on
it's
the-
constantly moving, you gotta catch it at the
Well,
right
it's
time or
running
wait
on the
another
same
hour.
channel where the meetings are running, that's the problem,
Oh,
so
okay.
that if you know, it's up there for like a few minutes before
Yeah.
the next meeting
Yeah.
starts, but you're not gonna catch it.
Yeah.
So I think it'd make more sense to, if you could get that, that list up someplace else, if people wanted to
Yeah.
see it,
Yeah.
get it onto a website or something where people can look at it, that would make a lot more
I
sense.
heard-
That would be helpful.
I heard tales that many, many years ago, they had this folding thing that you could read, a newspaper, and it had the TVs listed their programming for a week at a time in it. It's amazing. So it can be done, and I bet if they have it, we could get it and share it pretty simply on the
You know, like
website.
So,
cable guy.
let's see what we can do about that.
Right, it's-
That'd be great.
It used to be out there, used to be a TV guide and published, it used to be in the newspapers weekly, so I'm sure that we could find a way to get it on the website, in whatever town the management's released, and just, they could probably send a digital form, so you just drop it on and.
Just don't get too mad if every once in a while something's not like written on that schedule. Invariably, mistakes will happen, but we'll do our best. That's all I'm asking. You can do what you want, but I'm just asking you to. I have nothing more on the topic though. Did anybody else have a thought? Okay.
I
Oh.
just wanted to say that when Mr. Higgins was here, I think his main complaint was that the TV was blank for like 5 days straight. There was nothing on it at all.
I don't recall that, but I don't doubt what you're saying. There may have been it was just a black screen or something for some reason. It wasn't running program.
Yeah, I'm not sure the status of things. The last I had talked to Rick, there had been some changes in the internet access, and he was having trouble accessing the facilities. I haven't heard from him since then, so maybe that's been resolved.
Every now and then we continue to have some bumps. I know I had to go down there today to reset the router because he couldn't get in, so we're looking at upgrading the router and some of the issues that they're having with connectivity.
Is that still something that, because we have fiber here, it would still be better to move that into this building and maybe, rather than try to rebuild that room over there?
Yes.
Okay. Just wanted to double check. So we somewhat have plans on how we can improve some of this. Part of it also is hardware and upgrades to some of the systems, but we'll work through, try to get more answers on some of the programming issues and see what we can do to improve the product. Thank you. All right.
Thanks, George.
I'm gonna do the new business first, only because we have people here that may be interested in the new business. Is anybody in the room right now here for the special event permit, the Duval 5K road race? If you could step up and present your request.
I'm right up to the,
So, good evening, Selectmen. We're here, this petition before you is to request proposal for a 5K run and walk in collaboration between Joseph A. Duval, his family, and Quabbin of Q Drug to put on a 5K run and walk. Our proposal is, to put this 5K on September 23rd. The event would be held at Felton Field here in Barry. We've already made all the, engaged all the correct folks, for use of the field. We've already spoke to the chief of police in regards to, use of the public right of way. And we basically, are putting this event on to bring awareness to this rampant issue that we have in our community, as well as many communities across the United States of addiction, substance abuse and recovery.
Okay. I appreciate actually the efforts you're putting in for this.
Thank you.
It's a big issue that you need a lot of people doing what you're doing, or it sits in the background and continues to do a lot of bad
so
things.
Here, this is, I don't know if you wanted to see our flyer. We've made those flyers, and we're going to, start posting those around town with your approval to hold the event. And we're actually looking to eventually become an approved 501c3 organization. So we're doing this in collaboration with Q Drug, who does hold that authority for tax write-off purposes for sponsors and those who donate for tax benefits. But in the future, we're looking to actually create our own 501c3, so we can disperse the funds as we see,
under your own board and rules
Right.
and regs.
Right.
Okay.
And this is Robert Duval. It's Joe's dad. Todd Fargnoli. I'm Joe's brother-in-law. Married to Joe's sister, Sheena, and we're all a very close family here in this community. And I grew up here my entire life. Bob's grown up. He's been here his entire life, and I've been affected personally by addiction. It's hit my family, my immediate family. It's hit my my adopted or in-law family, as well as many friends. And we just feel that this type of an event, to bring unity to the town. A lot of people who have been affected by this, to kind of have that forum to come and just show their support, we believe is a really good thing. And Q Drug actually, reached out to us and asked if we would be interested in helping facilitate an event in Joe's name. And we immediately jumped all over it. I believe it's because they do have a lot of activity in this area, but they haven't put on an event like this. So we're really just trying to help them. Most of the profits are going to be are going directly to Q Drug. We only ask that a small amount of the money is going to be an escrow in a bank account that we opened up, so we have enough funds to start to keep this event going and have the money for T-shirts and other things that we have to purchase for the event next year.
Okay. Yep. Sounds like a good starting point. Either of you have any questions?
Yeah, my only concern he touched on initially is that Felton Field under control of the Felton Field Commission. We need to make sure that they give us a sign off just to add to
Yeah.
the stiffening out,
Do
that's
we
all.
have that?
Because you, they actually control the field, so we can give a permit for use of the town on the properties, but they have.
Right.
um,
We have met with,
I don't think it'll be a problem, but
right,
it's just the
so the rep
formality.
from Q Drug that we've been dealing
Right.
with has spoke to, the folks over at Felton Field, but I don't.
Yeah, it's Christie, Warburton.
Right, they, my only concern is because they do run a lot of events, they have horse events,
Yeah.
baseball, and the league and other events down, just making sure that, because they know what the schedule is down there, we don't have that, and make sure we don't have any conflict.
Yeah, she had spoken with them and said that it was set for
So-
cleared. So if you need that in writing, I'll speak with her tomorrow.
Yeah, even an email from the Felton Commission to
To the
the town
administrator,
administrator's
that's
office
fine.
should be enough for us to say.
Okay.
That's my only concern for
Yeah.
it.
Very valid
Don't
concern,
wanna see
right?
any
Yeah.
hang-ups, you show up and there's 50 horse trailers there on the same day.
Exactly.
Kinda makes it hard to run in the
Or
roads
us
with
just coming to
horses.
pitch to you the use of a, location that we
I
haven't,
Wasn't concerned for that, but my
Right.
concern is that it's an active field during the
Yeah,
summer, especially the
absolutely.
fall, so.
We almost double booked the common last week at the
That
last
would've been
meeting.
good.
And it just so happened somebody remembered, isn't there an event going on that same day? And then it all clicked and we're like, well, let's wait. So we have something on the agenda this week to remind us of what we decided not to act on 2 weeks ago because of that. So he brings a valid point up. We've got to make sure we do our internal communication before we just, but I have no other concerns other than just us closing the loop on communication. And I appreciate the efforts. I would fully support this, so.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion that we grant permission to the 5K run.
Pending the
Felton Field
confirmation.
We'll get that right over to you as soon as we get a hold of Christie. I'm sure she'll be able to get in touch with the commission and we'll have them email you right away.
That'd be great. And
I'm
it wouldn't hurt
notorious for
if
not
we just
pushing
reach out
anything
as well.
till everything's done, but this wasn't on your list, so.
Yeah.
I'll second the motion to grant this pending the Felton Field.
Thank you.
Okay. Any further discussion?
No.
Call for a vote?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. I really
Thank you.
appreciate
Good luck.
this.
Good luck.
This is what makes the towns work. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Hold on a second, could you get a picture of that and put that on the website, please?
Would you like to, that's an extra if you'd like to keep it.
That way he can get it on the town site,
That'd be great.
document that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
We'll see you, thanks.
River's Edge Cycling LLC. New Life Church. Well, let's just,
They probably expect us to get there till later.
let's start with the New Life Church. That was the item we had to push off from the last one, and maybe they revised the date, or we clarified why. Either way.
So I did talk to them about the location, the conflict with the car show that day, and they agreed to move the event to the Southbury Common rather than holding it up.
Alrighty.
Trying to hold it in the same location on the same day, so. Two completely different ends of town.
Is it a Saturday or a Sunday?
Nothing on Southbury Common?
It's a Sunday?
Yes, I did
Okay.
talk to the Southbury Common Committee
That'd
to
be
make sure that
unlucky.
there wasn't anything ongoing at the
And
same
they-
time.
okay.
Yeah.
It's a family fun day sponsored by the New Life Church. They're looking to do that the September, what day? 8th, down at Southbury Common
This Saturday.
this Saturday. So, for anybody interested, I would make a motion that we accept this.
Second.
In favor?
Any further discussions? Call for vote.
Aye.
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 All right. It's gonna be a nice weekend. Lots going on, so take advantage of it. River's Edge Cycling is another request to use town property.
Friday.
weekly,
It's the
bike tour
stop
that comes
along the
through
way.
town. They stop at the town hall to stop, use the facilities there, just kind of, get some rest before continuing on to Boston.
Okay. When we say use of North Common, because I know that's a touchy thing for people to understand, are we saying that they're not actually in the common?
Right, they're just kind of
Like
stopping.
at the
Right.
sidewalks? Okay.
Rest, drop, hydration, fruit and energy bar, so I assume they just want that parking between there and the church.
Yeah, I think that's where they normally did it.
I would think. And they know a lot of people stop for lunch, that'd be great.
Okay.
And 50 lunch visitors a time. I'll make a motion to approve the request for a Riverside cycle.
Second.
Further discussion, the only thing I would add is please make sure they do understand that it is not within the fencing. It's not inside
Right.
the common.
I don't think they'll go in.
Me either,
unless they're
but-
unless they're just sitting on the ground.
Now, again, walking through respectfully is one thing. It's just don't set up tents inside, and that's all I meant, really. Call for a vote?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Alright. Now let's get back to the beginning, old business stuff. We'll start with the marijuana bylaw. I'd like to just update the board based on what I brought up last week. What I intended to do and how that discussion evolved a little after sitting in front of the planning board. So at the last meeting, Greg, you weren't here, but I brought up the idea of kind of splitting the bylaws the way we presented it, rather than it all falling on the planning board under zoning. Marijuana licensing is just that, it's licensing. And the host community agreement is actually both licensing and the host community agreement generally fall under the Board of Selectmen in the town. So I thought that separating the roles of that part from what the planning board was doing, where they were actually instituting, I don't wanna say special criteria, but the way they had it as a special permit granting authority, they did give themselves some leeway that, okay, here's the zoning, here's your offsets, here's your requirements, but then there are certain considerations we'll go through during public hearing process to bring in input, maybe change the style of fencing or things like that. And my initial point was, I feel that one, that's more of a host community agreement discussion, because we can put that into that, and that's a contract negotiation, which means we have more leeway than a zoning bylaw would allow when it comes to subjectivity.
We have to make a host community agreement for the retail store?
Any marijuana business that wants to get a state license actually has to get a host community agreement before they can apply for the license, I think. Or at least before they can get the license. So if we don't give them the host community agreement, they can't come into town anyway, no matter what bylaws we put in place.
That's a good fail-safe to make sure that the towns approve that before someone applies for a permit, so I like that.
And the second part of that, say the Board of Selectmen's role that I was thinking is, I think we need to institute a bylaw that would explain that role, but also it makes sure, the bylaw should be written in such a way as also make sure the Board of Selectmen is accountable to the people. In other words, a minimum of 2 public hearings. One to acquire everything that the business says they want to do. We can absorb it, have questions, go back and forth, get public input, and at a minimum, we'd have 1 more. It could be 7 more, it doesn't matter, it depends on when we're ready to make a decision. But at a minimum, we put in the bylaw 2, so that the second one would be where we sit down and say, all right, you offered that, we've discussed, we reviewed, we've talked to people, we've got input on what we think is best for our community, and this is what we're asking you to do if you're gonna come here. It might be, you need to put up an 8-foot privacy fence, not chain link fence. It might be, if you're not gonna do that, chain link, but you gotta surround it with arborvitae's. Or we can come up with more of that type of subjective discussion with them. And they'll know from the get-go, before they invest any more money with the state or any more money with designs to get to a planning board level, all the extras the town might try to throw at them prior to investing the additional money just to get to the planning board. And so I thought that would cover that, but then the planning board would still build their zoning bylaws. And originally I was gonna say they would not end up with a special permit granting authority. But after I thought about it, I could understand still giving them that, but what it really means is, at that stage, they will receive the complete plans that that also, the planning board would say, okay, is this in accordance with the host community agreement? So they have to have the host community agreement, the zoning bylaws, and the plan presented by the business to say, okay, you're in order. And then it moves forward. It's not and we would like to add this, because we didn't think about it before. This is what it is, and it allows 2 separate bylaws to be presented to the town, one for zoning and one for the licensing side of it. And it gives each board a role, but in order to get to those bylaws, the thought would be the Board of Selectmen and the Planning Board should have some joint meetings leading up to the special town meeting, agreeing on the general roles each would play, because I think it's important that the 2 boards really work together, and when we're done, we're like, we agree, this is where we wanted to be. Even if it means it's not perfect, it's just like everything. You gotta kind of get as close to the ideal as you can, but if you can't reach it, you gotta accept some point that I would love to have that power, but I think it's the planning boards, and vice versa, they might want. So I don't want it to be a power fight, I just want it to be something we work together to a common mutual end. And I think it would work best if we could come up with a few meetings between the 2 boards. And this is me just presenting to you. I haven't gotten in a lot of anything more than this generally with the planning board. But I think it would help us both get to a point when we're at the special town meeting, both boards say, we accept what's being presented in front of the town, and we've all had the chance to really see it before it goes before the town. But to do that means we gotta start scheduling some joint meetings sooner so that we're not running into and we can't do it. Tuesdays, obviously, we can't do that. Mondays might not work for them. So I don't know if we need to look at another night that might work.
Tuesdays are open now.
They're opening now for you?
Yeah,
Okay.
so summertime, they're gone, so I have Tuesdays now. Let me say a couple of things. First of all, I think the procedure required is clear, and I think it's dead on where it should be. They should be making the bylaws, the zoning, where this is going to happen, what type of area is allowed to be in, and setbacks from the street and things of that nature are theirs to set up. They certainly need to understand the process. For the applicant should be, number one, come to us. We'll have our public hearings, and they come up with a host agreement. When that's accomplished, step 2 is they go in front of the planning board. And the planning board is going to make sure that they've met the zoning bylaws and they've complying with our host agreement. And then they would grant the special permit, which allows the structure to go forward. When they get to that point, then yes, then they come back to us for a licensing, which would go forward for the state. So also when we're done, set out simple steps for people so they can understand 1, 2, 3, 4. You see us for agreement, you see the planning board to get your special permit, which means you're going to comply with their rules and they're going to make sure that ours are being complied with. Then you come back to us for the license approval, and then it goes to the state to actually get the license. So we can lay it out in 4 simple steps for them, but I think that's exactly how it is supposed to go. The planning board is the one in control of the zoning and the creation of where it should be in the laws for it, and it is definitely this board's right and responsibility to control the licensing. So I think it's clear and exactly how it should be.
Okay. Do you have any thoughts on that?
No, I pretty much agree with what's been said.
What I would like to do is then, and either I can do it or we can even ask Andrew to do it at this point, is reach out to the planning board and see if we can set up at least 3 dates we can have meetings on. Sooner than later. Again, I want to get this going so at least we have the foundation where then if we split off and we build a draft bylaw, and then we come back later and say, okay, this is what we're thinking, we're on it. Otherwise, November is going to sneak up and we're going to be like, oh, once again, I don't know what they're writing, I don't know what we're writing, and I don't want to be throwing it out like that if we can help it. That's all.
They definitely write the bylaws, but that was the holdup when we went for the town meeting, was we didn't have enough time to really look at it. And the more we thought about it, you even spoke on it, there's concerns you did have. And we definitely need a little back and forth and have our input to make sure that we're happy with those, because we've got to present them on the warrant to the town. So we want to make sure that's covering. Well, the more people involved, the more input from the population we're going to get, and a better feel for what people want and their concerns are.
Are there certain days of the week or things that would work better to try to get a meeting together? I think the planning board meets on Tuesdays normally. Obviously, this week we're both meeting on a Tuesday, but would that be worth it to try to meet when they meet?
That's probably up to them. Is that gonna bother their scheduling? I don't know how busy they are.
Right.
I imagine busy. So I don't know if they wanna do a special meeting with us or if we wanna meet an off Monday with them. But prior to their meeting.
But because we're DPW commission, we end up not having many off Mondays. We have one a month.
Yeah, true.
So
But, you know,
Thursdays ended up being my backup day when I had special meetings I needed.
But most of our
that,
DPW meetings are 30 minutes. They're very,
That's true. We
they're
might be
very
able to
quick,
hit
so
that
we can
in-
certainly do one or the other. You know, have a meeting at 7:30 or 8 o'clock with them, because we shouldn't. I hope we don't get too long-winded in these, but initially, we needed to cover some ground of where we want to go with the bylaws. It should be the first meeting shouldn't be but an hour to really kick around what we want to look at and where we want these laws to go, where we might want to consider this being in town and things. And then we could all chew on that, bring it to our separate meetings, and go back for another meeting with that later. And then we'd have a more lengthy discussion. I think the first one's going to be just a quick and down and dirty. This is what we got to accomplish, and start to put our separate thought, agree what we're going to work on, not so much work on it.
Right. Exactly.
And not sit there and banter this stuff about in the beginning until we've all processed it a little bit. And then we could have a meaningful meeting, which we'll probably need to schedule a separate day for, because it could be lengthy,
Yeah. I agree with that.
very lengthy.
Okay. So, is Thursday an alternate night that could work for us if?
Mm-hmm.
Right now, it's easy for me, yeah.
Okay.
I have no other commitments.
So,
except for this.
I'll send an email out to Doug and copy Andrew. Actually, it's an agenda item type thing, so I'll copy everybody just to say we're looking to have this meeting. Would a date like that work? Are you guys interested in it? They sounded interested but not committed when I spoke, but that was understandable. I just brought the idea to this, so I didn't expect a
Nobody likes
commitment.
me walking in their meetings and want to be involved. And this is why I try to stay out of their pre-meetings before this ahead of time, because I think when we go to their meetings, we're disruptive to their agendas and their meetings, and I don't want to disrupt any other committee's meetings. So certainly a separate date should make them happier, and have our input.
All right.
Without interfering with their responsibilities and their work.
Gotcha. All right, I'll get an email out by the end of tomorrow to at least just try to set up a meeting date and time. And we'll see where we can go from there. At least it's just the next step.
Good question.
Yes, sir.
My name's Tom Egan, I live on Walnut Hill Road. My question is, the meeting that you're talking about, would that be open to the public?
Yes.
All of them would be. Yes.
Absolutely.
If I could just add a couple of comments, not to blindside the board, but I'm somebody that will be coming to the town for a host community agreement sometime in the future. And one thing you all were talking about earlier, I can assure you, I put a lot of time into researching where the state's coming from on this. And the state is not going to issue anyone a license unless you already have a host community agreement. So the power really lies with the community, because nobody who wants to get into this business is going to invest a lot of money in it before they have a host community agreement and before the town is satisfied with the people that are coming to them.
Okay. That's good to hear. Yes. Sounds consistent and not waning. We've heard that before, and it's good to hear that we're still hearing that. It's not like, oh, there's rumors that they got in the door, now they just want to change how they plan it, because I've known the state to do things.
They were unbelievably strict with the agreement we had with Dina Iandoli with the CPC. I mean,
Yeah.
not liking how we signed the letter. They wanted it specifically signed by one board member, and we all signed it.
Yep.
They rejected it for that. For having unanimous signatures, they rejected it, so they're very, rigid.
The CCC has continued to evolve things since you guys made that first
Oh, yes.
host agreement.
We've had to make one or two more.
Things have changed, and from somebody who wants to be an entrepreneur in that field, it's a lot of time, it's a lot of effort, it's a lot of expense, and if you're not committed to doing it right, you're just gonna fail.
And that's the other part that, as time goes on, we'll see, but it is a commitment on the developer as much as it is on the community, and so that's why these things have to be really done right. So that's why we gotta get our ducks in the row for each board's role in the process and get the bylaws written right so that we can be as smooth as possible. Because even if we write a bylaw for how the board would deal with host community agreements, I think we would also have to create a policy so that somebody looking to do something here would actually know what we're going to review for possible inclusion into a host community agreement. Even if it's just bulleted items of these are things we may consider, not limited to.
If I can make one more comment, and I really don't want to appear obsequious, but the stuff that was presented at town meeting back in July, I took that to some consultants and had them look at it, and they were amazed. They said, the town of Barry has, whether it's the selectmen or the planning board or whoever initiated it all, the town of Barry, these consultants said, clearly has put a lot of effort into addressing, confronting the issue. They said that the proposed regulations were among the most sophisticated they've seen in the state.
We certainly had a lot of time to come up with a host agreement that we do have, and a lot of meetings, public input, planning board meetings, a lot of research on everyone's part. So yeah, we've put some time into it, and it's just the beginning, unfortunately. But
And the planning board did 95% of that bylaw legwork. So thanks for making a note of that, because they deserve the credit and the effort they put in.
we just get to sit here and request small changes, and they did everything else. We had the easy part of that.
So, anybody else, anything to say about marijuana bylaws at this time? Okay, I'd like to move on to the next item. Economic Development Committee adoption of charge. We'll start there. I noticed right off the bat you made that little thing to include the two alternates as. I'm comfortable with it as written, and my first thoughts would be to, once you get a chance to.
Has it changed since I looked at the draft you emailed?
Actually, it's in the big packet he gave you. The,
I emailed and I just suggested that maybe, I said I liked what it was, I just wanted to see the alternates.
yeah, in the very first
That was it.
paragraph
It was just the
of,
alternates.
it's like 3 pages in. 3 pages in. So it's like the first.
Yep.
Got it right up in here.
Yeah. Okay. Otherwise, it's the same. If it is, I
Yeah.
won't read the whole thing again, but certainly read it before and I liked it. The terms spell out when they're elected, when they're re-elected, how long they serve for initial. How they run, the public, that they keep minutes. I mean, everything was good, and their objectives were pretty clear. So I was happy with it as it was written. So now if that changes, I'm certainly happy with it now.
All right. Do I have a motion?
Move to accept the charge for the Economic Development Committee.
I'll second.
Any further discussion
Does he have anything?
I would like to.
on the committee or on the topic?
On the committee first, if you don't.
Okay, go ahead.
I've already approached some folks with preliminary talks, gauging interest for joining the Economic Development Committee. Notably, 3 of them came from the business community of Barry, which somewhat kind of overlaps in function there. However, I also extended invitations for all of the local residents that expressed interest in bringing more economic development to the area. economic development in its wholest, like the whole big picture view of having it not be limited to just one narrow view of economic development, but expanding upon that to having a basis and foundation to what supports an economic development movement, which are having a community of customers, which are having a tightly knit buy local community, folks that understand the value of preventing leakage of their income into outlying competitive areas, that sort of thing. So in addition to that, I wanted to make sure that we had folks buy local as much as possible and facilitate that as much as we can. In addition, I would like to see folks just express interest and pride in being of the Quabbin region and also work together with the five-town region.
Okay.
Those are certainly things that we consider when selecting our committee members for those that apply, absolutely.
I would like to chime in that it's important not to only have the business community. It's important that we have a diverse array of voices, because every single person interprets the same built environment differently. Whether you're an entrepreneur, that's a valuable voice. Whether you're a mom of 9, that's a valuable voice. We need to have a nice healthy cross-section of what's representative of Barry and the region.
Agreed. And that's to all of those listening or those in the room, whether it's on TV or not. I think it's really important for people to realize that we are interested in participation from the town, and we're not going to get too stuck on what you might perceive to be what you can bring to a committee. Not just the Economic Development Committee, but the Finance Committee, the Transfer Station Study Committee, Energy Conservation Committee. We have several committees that have empty spaces that truly need some help. And so right now, you can also learn on the job. So
Goodwill goes a long way.
it makes a big difference. So I'm just putting it out there right now. Yes, you want people that know certain things on a committee, but you also need some balance where it's not necessarily coming from someone that's just completely educated and understands finance or macroeconomics or whatever you want to call it. You know, you need some people that understand just people. You need some people that understand what a plumber goes through, what a farmer goes through, what a single mom goes through. Some of these people, economic development to them is, can I get a store that can get me something cheaper?
Take out the word economic, it's still a development committee, and we're looking to develop the town of Barry in a way that's hopefully economically beneficial to the town. But you know, anyone that has, you know, the idea of development of business or housing or use of
anyone else would like that. Sorry to interrupt you. I do have some additional materials if anyone is interested.
Yes.
It's not exactly, you know, magical, arcane knowledge. Most of it's common sense, but it's the sort of thing that I think would do well for us for the future to keep in mind. Excuse me. I only have one more. Two more. Getting back to it, I haven't introduced myself to you guys yet. My name's Todd Miller. I went to Quabbin, went to Ocam Elementary. This is home for me. I work for the 5-town region, work for Barry, work for New Braintree, Hubbardston, Ocam, the entire works, Hardwick too. I'm trained
Actually,
as a
directly for Hardwick. That's the
not
last one he calls out, but it's the one that pays his check.
the grant pays my check, but yeah.
I'm just having fun.
I'm trained as a town and city planner.
I don't think he saw any humor in that.
Studying Suffolk city planner.
Dry humor.
I've done economic development work in my previous job working for the town of Franklin, right in between Boston and Providence. And ironically, it adds up to about 33,000 people, which is just a hair more than the 5-town region, I bet. So it's different, but it's the sort of thing that I think I can bring some good ideas here. Although I do have need of, like I said, disparate voices cutting across from everything. You guys, just like I am, are from here. You guys know what it means to be from Barry, from the entire region. All of these 5 towns, they're unique in their identity, but the issues and challenges they face equally apply to all of them. This is very much a situation we will sink or swim together, and like it or not, our fates economically are tied together. And we need to confront that with some solidarity amongst each other, some goodwill and some cooperation, and some hard work, and I think we'll be just fine. There are some issues coming down the pipeline as folks are pushed out of Worcester they're bumping into Rutland, who has just recently hired a full-time member of the planning staff to deal with the new influx of development. I give it 5 or 6 years by my estimate, and Rutland will face interior build-out as well as they're politically willing to develop, and then they're going to be right on Ocam's doorstep. And once that happens, it's only a matter of time before it hits us. So I'd say we have, in a generous estimate, 5 to 7 years before we start feeling the pinch of increased development and all the changes and metamorphosis that comes with it. And I want to make sure that these regions, they keep their rural character, their sylvan quality. We need to deal with this development on our terms. Otherwise, it's going to happen on their terms. And if we want to keep Barry in this region as it is, we should get a hold of it now and start thinking in the 5 or 6 year scans, 5 or 6 year scope. Okay? If you have any questions, I'm going to.
At the moment, I don't. But with that discussion, I would like to call for a vote on the actual charge.
I'm in favor.
I'm in favor. 3 ayes. Charge is approved.
Accepted candidates.
And then, speaking more on the concept, just to reiterate, Barry got a grant to develop an economic development plan, what they call Phase 1, for the town of Barry alone. That's what the grant was written for, I should say. It's probably going to be an elaborate outline of what an economic development plan should be. It's not going to get us all the way down the line. It's going to say, here it is, fill in the gaps. It's Phase 1. We might get a grant to do Phase 2 and get it more consulting or assistance down the line to expand on it, or we might be able to actually get this economic development committee to be able to start taking on that and filling in the blanks as a committee. The reason I bring that up is Hardwick got a grant for the region to have an economic development coordinator or planner. Todd Miller is who they hired for that, and he represents actually the 5 towns: Hardwick, New Braintree, Oakham, Barry, and Hubbardston? Hubbardston. And we're all going to share the services of this economic development coordinator, and that's what Todd's bringing up about his role for all towns to look not only isolated within their own boundaries, but also their neighbors and how they can work together. Certain towns will have certain strengths, certain resources, certain benefits. It's very similar to what QEMP was doing for municipal shared services and other things. It's now developed. Is it next week or the week after there's another meeting?
At the administrative building.
Is that September 12th?
I believe that's right, yeah.
Okay, so there's a meeting there again where they already started initiating conversations between different towns and how we might be able to share resources, or how the school can share resources with towns. And it started with the whole, how can we save money at the schools? And then it started developing into a bigger picture, and now it's actually looking at pretty much what Todd's trying to do now. And as this grew, it was generally supported by CMRPC from the beginning, helping with grants, helping get different consultants and specialists. I believe Collins Center was brought in, but I think they might have been brought in with CMRPC to get it started. And then they went as far as they could on the school issue. Collins Center moved off, CMRPC came back in, helped continue the process. So next week we have another meeting where members from various facets of all towns will be showing up. That might even be a good way for someone to get an understanding of what we'd be asking this economic development committee for the town of Barry to do. Attend some of those meetings, some smaller meetings where you're actually just working with specific developers, specific town entities, depending on which town you're in. Maybe you need to talk to the sewer or the water department to find out if there's certain infrastructure upgrades that would actually make a difference in how we could develop a neighborhood. But it's something that even though members of this board and the town administrator may be aware that we need to do, we just can't get to it. We have so many other things that we need to start delegating, and this is a perfect board to help us with some very key things we need to start working on now. Or similar to like Todd said, it won't be many years before you won't have the ability to have much control over it, and you'll just continue to be dragged to a certain goal and say, this is what you'll do. We all know the state will do that. The state will say, this is what you will be, this is what you will do, if they don't see you going somewhere on your own. And we need to have a stronger voice, and the voice is actually based on data, statistics, and things you can put on paper. So we need an economic development committee to help us build that plan and move in a certain direction and help us get somewhere. So it's really important if we can get the help. That's all I can say on that now. I don't know if you guys have anything more you'd like to say on that subject. What I'd like to do, Todd, is actually take some time to read this and then catch up with you again at the next step, and hopefully we'll actually have some members for the committee willing to start stepping in. And
sure thing, just bear in mind, this presentation is broad strokes.
Yeah.
These are
high
things
level.
that are completely mutable. Everything is subject to change. It's the sort of thing, when so much of our tax levy comes from our residential base, we can't even begin to talk economic development in strictly a commercial sense. We need to facilitate the community of customers to support a business with enough. We need to have a large enough community to support it. So I have some residential development plans here through the USDA, FHA, that sort of thing, because there's no way around the elephant in the room. That is, when 90% plus comes from a tax levy, that needs to be a part of the equation. Although I'd like to see a bit more balance between the two. But it's just something to keep in mind that all this is subject to change. I looked at all the quantitative data from the past 10 to 15 years, ICS and everything else, but we have one more year until we have another census coming out. So all the data I had was 5 years old at the most recent, and it was estimates at that. So I'm gonna really begin to get into the weeds of this later on. But all the basic information is there. I'll give all of you guys my contact information. You can contact me during outside business hours. All of you guys do. This is my home too, so I plan on working as much as I can take it.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
With that, partly because I also know we got a lot on the plate tonight, I would like to move on to the next subject.
Mind if I go upstairs?
I have. No, you're locked. You can't move. This is a tyrannical society we live in. We will not let you be deceived.
I had something witty, but it's gone.
Okay.
All right, see you guys later.
You got it. All right, let's get on to the Transfer Station Study Committee appointments. Do we have any more than the original two?
Carry over.
What would we like to do about that, gentlemen? Do we have thoughts, or are we just going to wait again to see if somebody else is interested before we actually start getting things going? I believe right now we have John Chase and Kathy Inman as the two people that have applied to be on the committee, but we have no other interest written at the moment.
I'd like to see more on the committee, but I'd also like to see it start. They can't get as much done as two, but they can certainly start to look at things and gather information and do some research.
Would we like to see if those two members would like to come to our next meeting? And the board can talk to them about the type of information we're looking for and see if they can at least start trying to gather data for us?
Yeah, we can do an official appointment then.
Yeah. Hopefully we can get some more members by then. At least get it started and use the resources that are available, the ones that are willing to participate, and get what we can get out of it.
I thought maybe if I could have somebody from the Board of Health, a representative from them, a representative from this board, and possibly somebody from Department of Public Works. They're might be the ones that run it.
See, I thought they could help anyway without having to be on this committee. That was where I was like,
I know. Just a thought, that was just my,
I think originally did we say they couldn't be on it, or that we weren't gonna hold a position specifically for them? In other words,
Hold this position specifically for anybody from the board who wanted to see what you got for interest.
but if they wanted to apply, they still could have applied to be on it. Okay.
I
Maybe
see
we
what
just
you're
need to
saying.
clarify that if they want to be on it, they can still apply. We just weren't holding the position for them. That was, I thought how I had requested it to be rewritten, just so that we didn't lock other people out. But it's pretty apparent, I didn't have to worry about locking anybody out at the moment. But feel free if you don't mind, or even if you want to, Charlie, just to reach out to the Board of Health.
Yeah.
DPW, see if anybody's interested to either be on it or just at least give their name and number, so that if Kathy or John wants to talk to them, they're available.
Maybe even other commission members on the DPW. Obviously, our
Oh yeah, the
DPW is
Water
stretched.
Commission, Sewer
Our
Commission.
DPW itself is stretched kind of thin right now. All of the actual departments are.
But yeah, maybe.
We might be able to get a commission member that would
Actually,
step in.
we got one. John Chase is a commission member, so Kathy's a former member, obviously, but. So yes, we need assistance. We need people to help the town. So I am asking again. In the meantime, I guess we can table the rest of this until the next meeting, and hopefully those two can come and we can get into a little bit more discussion about first steps, next steps. Next item on here is revision to the CMRPC delegate. Previous alternate delegate was Phil Hubbard. He's no longer on the planning board, so I recall getting an email from the planning board recommending Dennis Fleming as the alternate CMRPC delegate. And I think the planning board votes on the primary, so they've already handled that, so. Do we have a motion for Dennis Fleming to be the alternate?
So moved.
Second, presuming he wants it.
Anybody else have any discussion on the matter? Call for vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Dennis did agree to that, right?
My understanding, I didn't speak to him directly, but they said he would like to do it, so I'm hoping they didn't lie to me.
I would think he would, but
It's a good point, though.
he's not here.
That's pretty good.
He's upstairs.
Police union contract, what's that?
So we have the.
Oh, to actually sign the.
actual contract, so you've already voted on the MOA, this is the physical contract itself, it's been signed by the union, so. I don't know if there's anything that you guys wanna review in that, but I know that you've already worked through
I
it.
got this draft just before it went to the union to sign, and we had a quick couple comments, we got it cleared up based on the original MOU. I'm comfortable with it, but if you guys don't have a copy, if you feel like you need to read it to make sure, I'm willing to wait until we can get to that point.
I don't think I have a copy, however, this was your baby, you wrote it. And if it is what we agreed to before, I'm comfortable with it.
I am comfortable that this is what we agreed to.
Okay, because we went through that earlier, and that's
Yeah.
fine.
I agree with Greg.
Okay.
So, with that, I guess we would just take a vote to accept the contract
We've done
based.
that, right?
I don't know which one we voted on, the MOU or the contract. It
Okay.
really should be the same thing, but it's not always. Where's
Make a
our
motion-
signature page?
It's further up, it's on the side.
Make a motion, we sign the police union contract.
Second.
When's this contract expire?
Year and a half. Is that right? It's almost
2020, it's right in front.
2020? Okay. Close enough. 2 years left in a 3-year contract. Any further discussion? Call for vote.
Aye.
Aye. Only one original signature copy, or just?
No, that was dropped off to me today, so.
Okay. We get to keep the original. Otherwise, they could have had two signed and sent it to us, and they didn't, so we get the original, they get a copy. Unless our attorney says some other third party gets the original and I didn't know about it. All right, the next thing would be the bandstand repair contract.
So, this is basically what I had presented to you guys. The last meeting, talked additionally about the, what to do about the flooring, and you had brought up the additional contractor looking into. So I did talk to the contractor. What we agreed upon is basically that we'd go forward with change orders 1, 2, and 3, which was the sill repairs to the masonry, the additional painting to the ceiling and scraping of the fascia, and then the removal of the speaker system. But then we go forward with removing the skim coat and painting of the floor, which would credit $1,700. They were going to look at having another vendor come in to provide a quote, but even if it's still in the ballpark, we might look at doing that down the road. This contract at least takes care of all of the real major stuff that we have with it: the stairs, the painting, the cracks, the bulkhead. Basically, everything has been brought forward, other than having a brand new shiny floor.
Is it going to seal the repairs to the floor so that they won't break open by spring due to winter and weather?
Yeah. So we'd basically be doing the same thing that they're doing in the basement, of sealing existing cracks. But we're just not skim coating and painting, because we're looking at the original contract said a full skim coat of the floor, but then when the mason looked at it, basically said that, well, you get a couple of cracks in that and it's just gonna fall apart. So we decided to take that out of the scope of work.
Okay, now when the word painting is used, do you know what product they were recommending they meant by that?
As far as painting the floor, that was something that we used in the original scope of work. That wasn't something that we specified.
So we just used the word paint?
Yes.
Okay.
Because if you look at the flooring, at some point somebody had painted the floor, so we always thought that was original.
What's your thoughts on that?
Flooring paints are very specific. Flooring paints on wood, typically latex epoxies work better.
This, the concrete floor, right?
The concrete floor, I like to see a two-part epoxies go down in that. It's the best longevity. They harden just like a 5-minute epoxy. It hardens. You can put flake in it for color. You can put texture in it, but they become a non-porous uniform surface floor when it hardens.
Okay.
Two-part epoxy. This stuff's expensive to buy. You're talking $150 for a gallon mix probably to buy it, but it's worth it. But it's gotta be clean.
Yeah, we'll see what the second subcontractor comes back to with the price, because apparently he had this GC had talked to somebody in the field, and they said that the person that he got the original price quote from for the $36,000 is, basically does large jobs, and the small jobs like that he's gonna jack the price up for. So we got a couple of other contacts. He's gonna give me a second price, but for now we're just gonna take any.
Did I pass you the contact of the company that I was talking about? I might have sent you the name, right?
Right, you did. I will contact that person directly if this price doesn't come through, just because I don't want to do two concurrent contracts with two different vendors, or have this GC contact this guy and then end up paying
The markup.
Markup on it.
Okay.
I think in the end we'll end up just probably doing everything but the flooring and then doing that as a separate later.
Okay. Does that contract include the railings?
Yes.
And we expect that the scope will not be eaten up during permitting process and have to be rewritten?
Permitting the town should be exempt from paying permit fees.
That's up to us.
Right.
Not paying the permit fee, but the permit still to do the work and meet building code. That's what I'm asking. Do we know if the scope written is actually going to make it through the permitting process so they can actually do the work?
But again, it's gonna be up to us probably.
We can't waive building code.
No, but unless we're making structural alterations, repair works, you can check with BN, repair work should be allowed. We're not building, modifying, destroying, or rebuilding the structure. You know, if they're wholesale replacing the railing, then that's subject to code. If they're repairing the
See,
railing.
that's why I wanted to know if somebody
repairing-
reviewed the scope to know what we're doing.
If they're repairing with the railing, it's not. Painting of the floor and fixing the cracks are exempt from that. It's just routine maintenance. So,
Yeah, that's,
re-roofing, if they're gonna re-roof the structure, yeah, you should get a permit for the roof. It's gonna be inspected and done properly to re-roof, resurface the roof, whether it's a go-over or not. But unless we get into structural issues, it really shouldn't. Decking board replacement here and there and stuff is, and the contractor should know that, and that's their responsibility to get to those permits. But
yeah, but it's not their responsibility to design it.
no, just.
So we told them to do something, and if we weren't clear on what we told them, and they gave a price, and then we execute a contract, they can come back and say it's gonna cost more to do this, this, and this, because you didn't ask me to do it, but the code's gonna require it. So I'm wondering who reviewed the scope we put out to bid to make sure that we're not gonna write a contract that didn't include all the work necessary to meet the code and do the work we wanna do.
It's up to the contractor to understand that the bid they're giving requires the TRIPS code, it doesn't trip code, so that's not our concern there. On electrical.
Make sure you understand municipal law, because
But you wanna
it doesn't
stipulate-
put it on the contractor.
We wanna stipulate the contractor must
It puts it on the owner.
meet licensing, meet codes, and get the proper permits to do this, that's all. If you put that stipulation in there, that puts the onus on them to get the permits. For example, if they're gonna do any wiring work, it has to be done in electrical permit. If they're gonna pull one piece of wire, one conduit, replace one switch or outlet, it's gonna be permitted.
Yeah.
And inspected, so that's gonna require a licensed electrician. You know, low voltage can be done by low voltage licensed contractor or an electrician. Pulling the speakers out shouldn't be a big deal for removing low voltage, but to run new low voltage would require
Yep.
a permit for that. So as long as it stipulates that the contractor is responsible to follow state code and get the appropriate permits to do the work, we'll be covered. I really don't think we'll trip it on anything. Unless they replace the roof or replace the
Okay.
and that's, you know, that, you can run that by Brianna. You can run the scope by Brianna and ask her if there's anything she wants done permitting wise, and she'll tell you probably very quickly what she wants a permit for or doesn't. I would doubt as much there she does, but the electrical, absolutely.
Do you reference the bid number or specific document names rather than just generic bid docs. Trying to see how we tie this to the actual scope specifically written, because right now, scope says base bid. I'm just curious, what's the base bid? How do we point and say this was the base bid?
Well, base bid should be listed along with all or all alternates.
Would you feel better to table this and review it on next week's meeting at DPW?
General
I'll go through it. It doesn't matter, I have no problem. I'll go through every bit of it.
And we still own it, so we can still make changes if need be.
Yeah, so if we make sure the first thing is right, and it locks the contract and binds them to the work we're looking to have done.
Right.
That'd be my only concern for the contract side of it. Is that I can mull know pretty quick from reading the scope if she's gonna want a permit, I think. Or if she's allowed to ask for a permit.
Kind of just puts it on them that they're responsible for applying necessary.
Yep. Okay, necessary permits and inspections, yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't put any responsibility on the scope of work, though.
Well, you could have a line that they sign, actually, that says, when you sign here, they acknowledge you're responsible for following the code and proper permitting. And that would, take the onus off us, especially if it's a signed line, not just part of the contract, but specific. Anytime I add specifics in the contract, that are pertinent, and make an issue of a sign here, spot for. That's easy enough to learn.
You wanna see this? Yeah, what I'm saying there is there's nothing in this contract that makes reference to a specific bid document. Number, like if you posted it for bid,
Do you want to
do you
revisit
have
it?
bid numbers based on how you post them? How do we do it?
Typically, we just refer to the scope, to the scope of services. We don't normally assign bid numbers.
So just based on a title?
Yeah. But I mean, anything that's out there is referred to as bandstand, bandstand repair, or can't think of the top of my head, but bandstand improvements.
Okay.
Any contract should include the scope of the work in it
Yeah.
anyway, so, when they sign it, they'll be signing on the scope. They wanna put it off till our DPW meeting and meet before or after that quickly. And
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
get a week
Okay.
to, work through it, so we'll table
Yeah,
it for now.
I'll just double check everything. The concerns and make sure that they're addressed in there.
If I could take a hard copy of that, that'd be great.
Okay.
It's easy to think of it, otherwise I gotta wait till I have the tablet at home to go through it.
All right. Any further discussion on the bandstand repair contract? Okay. Table that to the next meeting, DPW commission meeting, or after that, we'll follow it up with the Board of Selectmen meeting. Correspondence. Stetson School sent us a letter. In response to the letter we sent them, I am not going to read the whole letter. If you choose to, you can gather a copy of it from the town administrator's office and read it at your leisure. My initial feeling about the letter is it did not truly address or even speak to any of the things we requested, outside of the fact that I'll read one little paragraph, just because I feel this is important to get out there. Enclosed, please find a copy of a letter sent to SHF, which is Seven Hills Foundation, and Stetson from the Barry Board of Selectmen. This is a letter and an email actually sent to Attorney Baird, not to the Board of Selectmen. This is how they chose to respond, lawyer to lawyer. As you will note, the letter states that the Selectmen have voted that Seven Hills Foundation and Stetson erect a perimeter fence around the perimeter of the Stetson property. Our understanding is that the vote was taken in response to a concern by the Selectmen regarding attendees at Stetson escaping from the school campus. They put escaping in quotations, as if it's not the appropriate term to use, but they felt they had to use it because we brought it up. The vote gives the impression that the Selectmen view the students as prisoners who must be kept inside the property boundaries at all costs. Now, this is them kind of writing their own storyline. It's become completely subjective at this point. This attitude is not only contrary to the historical collaboration relationship which has existed between the town of Barry and Stetson, which is true, because that doesn't relate to the relationship with Seven Hills Foundation, which has only come in recently. So they cannot glom on to a 100-year relationship that they weren't a part of. But it appears to reinforce the overall hostile speech about Stetson exhibited by selectmen at former meetings. Efforts to isolate and disparage the school, its students and staff fail to recognize that since its founding in 1899, Stetson has been part of the fabric of the Barry community. Such efforts also ignore the beneficial impact the school has had on the community. As I said, I'm not going to read the whole letter, but I think in that one paragraph you can understand what the rest of the letter said. It pretty much said Stetson and Seven Hills is great, and how dare you even question the fact that children there might be troubled or may need certain additional supervision than the average child. That's how the letter really came off to me. So that's my subjective impression of their response to our attorney from their attorney. Which tells me that they didn't take anything we brought up into consideration. They actually did mention somewhere further down in the letter something about they would love to meet us at their place, like they said, was it a year ago almost to date? 9 months at least ago. They would meet us on their property, behind a locked door. Which, if this attorney actually has any concept of municipal open meeting law, realizes we can't do that as a board. Have a closed meeting to discuss the potential impact that community is having on our town. We've made efforts to try to have a meeting with them that allows us as a board to be there, and they've refused. And they continue to refuse and act like they've been offering to meet us forever. And they've made no effort to meet us based on the laws that we have to work within. And because of that, I find this is a wasted effort and response, and they truly don't understand our concerns or actually care about the concerns we raised. If they did, they might have actually tried to set up a meeting with the board, but they did not. And we have tried multiple times. That's my opinion on their response. Again, if you want to get a copy of it, review it for your own benefit, feel free to ask the town administrator's office for a copy of this letter, review it, and see if I'm even close to seeing it the same way you do. If I'm not, I'm more than willing to listen to anybody else's opinion on this letter in case maybe I may have a slanted or overly subjective view on the topic.
It's a little part here that's kind of important. If you pick this out, that's almost insulting. You can talk to our ambulance personnel to that. There have no below this. There've been no assaults. And they further insinuate that our local students and schools are more violent and have worse interactions with the public than theirs. But the ambulance personnel assaulted in the back of the ambulance from their students on a regular basis. That's just a complete
Yes,
lie.
so,
It's insulting.
yes, there is more in there where they actually do speak things such as, I'll actually read this one line verbatim. There have been no acts of violence or assaults committed by Stetson students, period. Apparently ever. Against anyone, anywhere, at all. In a way you could say even against themselves. Which is interesting because we happen to have something that just recently occurred where there was an assault that occurred from a member of that school after the member left the property. It's a different subject matter. We're going to work on a different line of discussion. But at the moment, their response did not even speak to the truth of the matter. They just wrote the storyline they wanted to write. I think we're all getting used to people writing the storylines they want to write. And we're just hoping we see the truth behind it.
As I said, Matt, they continue to say that, in fact, I would suggest that as compared with students of the same age group attending other schools, the number of Stetson students having, quote, negative interactions with the members of the public are far less. So that's a direct shot at our local kids. There's nothing in here that addressed our concerns for the community safety, our concerns that were brought up to several people at the meeting of having their properties trespassed upon, their sheds broken into, items stolen from, kids that left with an agenda to steal cars, to evade police, and to steal weapons. Some of these kids, the more violent and aggressive kids, are the ones that are leaving the school grounds. I'm frustrated. Clearly they look for police assistance and state police assistance. If I had a child missing from my house for 15 minutes, Chief, would the state police and you come out in 6 towns and look for my kid? Sure. In 15 minutes?
We come to help you.
Not like this. And they do this on a regular basis. I don't recall any of the homes in our town requiring 4, 5, 6 towns in the state police.
No, I'm not saying it's happened. No.
I'm saying it hasn't. And it happens here on a regular basis. And I think our concern for the population, for the community, and for their own students who can be disappearing for hours when we get into times of year when it's very cold, and there's a lot of places that you can get lost easily in the woods of this town if you don't know what you're doing, especially if you're a young kid and you're not dressed for it. And it falls on us, and it's expense to us, it's dangerous to our population. And despite that we've asked nicely to meet with us, they refuse. We've asked more firmly that they consider fencing the facility, and they refuse. And they respond with insulting and fictitious statements in their letters. And if they think my words are getting strong, they're right. I'm not happy with it. I'm not happy with their lack of response. I'm not happy with their lack of ability to keep their students under control in their facility, and I'm not happy with their inability to keep tabs on the whereabouts and welfare of the children that they are put in charge of by the state. And I think it's really time we try to get more state involvement, the state that pays for these students to be there, and the state that sets the regulations for this should be, I would hope, more involved and more concerned about the number of students that escape from here and the trouble they get into.
I think there's another point here too, in that same paragraph, that's quite a loaded paragraph in total. But
it's a loaded answer without addressing
and then they should not be the targets of hostility or egregious remarks by the town authorities. I don't think that any town authorities have made remarks about their clients per se. We are concerned about the management of the place, and our comments have been directed very professionally. And I went to that meeting that we had back in I guess it was in the winter time, not quite a year ago. But
I think it was.
Yeah, I thought we were
because
very,
he represented us because we couldn't do it as a board. So.
Right. Yeah, we were very, very professional with them. We're not talking about denial of service. We're not directing it at any of their people. We're directing at the management of the facility, and there is a difference. And we would like some cooperation here. This is certainly a big topic of discussion in our town, And we hear it almost every day. Somebody comments to me about Stetson and what's going on in the neighborhood, and even well beyond the scope of the neighborhood. So it's, you know, I take issue with the fact that we've directed things, targets of hostility, in an egregious manner, or whatever it says. We haven't done that. And this is a lot different than the situation that existed in previous years when we had regular students going to school and so on. And I don't mean their students are irregular, but I don't mean it to be taken that way, but, you know, so I was pretty upset with the tone of this letter. And,
yeah,
and I think, you know, if they're gonna be, think we're trying to isolate them from the community, having worked in this field, it is their function to make themselves a part of our community, not the other way around. We will meet anybody halfway, but they've gotta make an effort.
Once again, the insult to state, they're glad to meet with us on their terms, on their location,
Right.
facility. We cannot do that legally. We must meet here, we must meet in open forum, and they flatly refuse. You know, that's not cooperating. That's not any attempt at cooperation. They're not moronic. They understand that we are not allowed to do that, so that's what they offer. They offer what we cannot do, which is insulting.
So that's generally the correspondence of the day. We received that letter from Stetson in response to our letter to them saying that we think you should put perimeter security on your site because you've done a poor job of containing those that choose to try to run away. And we have had recent, meaning within the last couple months, escapees that left your site and went and broke into other people's homes, trailers, or trucks and stole things and continued to evade the authorities for over, I think it was approximately a 48-hour period, maybe 36, before they were found in a neighboring town. So for them to not recognize that there is a potential public safety issue when certain of their students get away without supervision is a failure to see the truth or to speak to the truth. And if that's the case, they're doing a disservice to those same children. You cannot help someone if you do not admit and identify an issue that needs to be resolved. And those children had issues with dealing with society. If you don't admit it, you're not helping the problem. And back to what Charlie said, it's a management thing. If you can't even speak up about the actual issues you're trying to address and work with the community in which you live to help resolve those issues. I've got nothing more on this today. There'll be plenty more in the future, I'm sure, but nothing more today.
I'd like to clarify that responding to their letter, I think, is ridiculous, and I would not even respond or identify to the garbage they wrote back to us. But perhaps at our next meeting, we'll give it some thought and decide what course we may want to take with this. But I certainly think it's time to talk to the state agencies that not fund them, but pay for these students to go there. And go from that angle next.
I do not disagree.
And it's also, I would entertain considering getting an expense for us into a town to possibly pay for erecting fences on private property that are neighboring and abutting that facility for those who wish it.
Something to explore.
It helps keep them
Again,
from
I'm
trespassing.
also,
I
if
would
it's in
rather
the
see
interest
them-
of our community, then I don't see a problem with
I
that.
would rather see them keep their students under control, but if they can't, you know, we've got to do what we can for public safety and the people that are regularly being trespassed on by those students.
I think that's definitely something to consider. So yeah, we'll table this for maybe the next meeting so we can actually try to get more into what's our plan in reaction to this response. Town administrators report. Andrew, what lovely information would you like to report?
Not much right now, working on backfilling a couple positions, got a few things going on, nothing directly to report right now. Can you give us a info as risks? Anything we're looking for information?
At the moment, I think I'm okay. I guess I'd open it up for public comment if anybody has something they would like to bring up at this time we haven't discussed already this evening. No? Well, the next agenda items are executive sessions. So we will be going into executive session, and when we leave executive session, we will not be going back into open session. We will just be adjourning. We will be going into executive session as per MGL 30A21 Exemption 1, related to discussions regarding discipline, dismissal, or complaints or charges brought against a public officer, employee, staff member, or individual regarding police department interactions.
Make a motion, we go to executive session, Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Section 21A, Exemption 1, and adjourn therefrom.
Second. Second. Thank you, Mr. Minor.
Nice that Stetson had the whole summer for all that construction. I doubt there was ever a fence on the drawing board.
It's
Nice to hear
a
from the
waste of
lawyer.
resources. Police and the local police to go find the kid.
Nice to see the fairgrounds once again active.
That was good.